Hello, welcome back to Stacey's Bookish Adventures. Today we are going to discuss all the books that I read in February and what I thought of them. So go grab yourself a cuppa, get yourself comfy, and let's talk books. So for those of you who watched my January reading wrap-up, you will know that January was just a crock of shite for me in terms of reading. There was very few books that I enjoyed. February, however, is much better, thankfully. I actually found a couple of books which are currently sitting as my new favourites, which is brilliant. For February, I didn't actually choose my TBR. I let my husband Craig choose my TBR using prompts from the prompt jar. He has wildly different tastes to me when it comes to reading, so I knew it was going to be an interesting month. And yeah, like I said, I found some new favourites. So let's get into it straight away. The first book that I read in February was actually not chosen by my husband, and it was chosen by my daughter Amelia, and that is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She absolutely adores this series. She adores pretty much anything from Jennifer Lynn Barnes. She'd been going on to me for ages to read this book. So basically this book is about a girl, a normal girl who for some reason gets left pretty much everything from some random billionaire that she doesn't have a clue who he is or why, but he's left her everything: the house, the estate, the business, pretty much all of the money, and left hardly anything to his family. The conditions are that she has to live in this house for a year, but also the family have to live there. I went into this book thinking it was going to be something completely different. I thought it was going to be sort of like an escape room or something like that. I thought she was going to be going into the house, having to solve a load of weird ass puzzles to get out and get her hands on the money. That's not really what happened. This book focused more on a love triangle that was building up between her and the brothers, because everyone fancied her. There were like a couple of puzzles and stuff in it, but nothing like too thrilling. It was an okay book for me. I thought it was okay. It's definitely aimed at a younger audience. A younger audience would definitely find this a lot more thrilling and engaging, but it was easy to read. I thought it was going to be a cracking book at the start. When they mentioned, what was it? And they said, smoosh in and hold up your warm nuts. And I leaned towards my sister and raised my warm nuts high. I was amused by that, and I thought that was kind of like the vibe it was going to go down. But then it turned into something, and I thought it was going to be something else. So my expectations kind of didn't match up, and that ruined the book for me, I think. For me, this isn't a series I'm going to carry on with, but I know a lot of people do love this series. It just wasn't for me. I gave it 3 stars, which isn't too bad. It's definitely not a bad book. It's just that I found it a little bit underwhelming, and I'm just not the target audience for it, I don't think. Next up, we have the book that I read from my reading vlog, and that is Legends and Lattes by Baldree. So this book is a cozy fantasy. It's full of fantasy characters. The book follows Viv, who is an orc. She's like some sort of warrior orc, but she's decided she don't want to do no murdering anymore. She wants none of that. She wants to settle down, and she wants to have her own little shop selling coffee. Trouble is, she's selling it in a land where nobody has ever heard of coffee before. So you're following her journey as she gets hold of the shop, does it up, turns it into a nice little cafe, meets some adorable characters along the way. I absolutely adored this book. I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, because it's a cozy fantasy, it wasn't all full of war and nastiness. It was just nice. It was a book about friendship. It was a book about kindness. It was a book about love and forgiveness. And yeah, I was so there for it. I loved it. I had a really good time with it. I read it pretty much with a smile on my face the whole way through. I adored the characters in it. The little ratkin Thimble was adorable, and I need a Thimble in my life. There's just something so sweet about that character. There was a tiny bit of romance in this as well, which I wasn't expecting, but I enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it wasn't in your face or anything. It was just nice. It was just, everything about it was just cute and cozy, and yeah, I loved it. So if you want to see my full review and my full thoughts and reactions to reading this book, then make sure you go and check out my reading vlog after you've watched this one. I gave it 4 stars, and is one that I definitely recommend picking up. Right, the next book, Craig had the prompt, a book from your favourite author, to work from, And so he chose The Fall by Ryan Cahill. He chose this because it's obviously Ryan Cahill is like one of his favourite authors. It's quite a small book, it's just a novella, and he thought it would be a good little taster into the world. It's all full of dragons and stuff like that, but it is just war from start to finish, basically. I generally struggle with fantasy books because of war. Like, I'm not interested in reading war whatsoever, and this book literally was war, fight, 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 war, the end. I did struggle. It's like an 80 odd page book. It's tiny, and it took me 3 days to read it. I would usually read that in at least, you know, I'd read that much in a sitting usually, if not more, but it took me a while. In terms of the writing in it was brilliant. I didn't have any issue with anything like that. It's just that this is not my type of thing. I feel like with this being a novella, it's a novella that is set a few hundred years before the main series is set. I felt very much like I was jumping in at the deep end. I felt like I was jumping in and I was just expected to know about the world. I was expected to know who these characters were, what was going on, and I didn't have a clue. So I feel like perhaps if Craig had given me the first book in the series, maybe I might have felt a little bit different. But from reading this, it's not a series that I want to read anyway, I don't think. What I did like about this book was I really liked the relationship between the dragons and the riders. I thought their connection and everything was beautiful. It was really, really nice. I did feel really sad when the dragons died, you know, and it did get me. So the writing is brilliant. It's just that, yeah, I'm just not into it. And when I read the phrase, the sword split him from head to crotch, I was like, nah, not for me. Dim diolch. No thank you. If you like proper fantasy, then definitely check out Ryan Cahill. He's a great author and he definitely has a great writing style. I just don't like this genre. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. The next book prompt was something along the lines of a book with a food item on the cover or in the title. We did not have many options. The only option we had really was death or ice cream. So that is what was chosen. I don't know what to say about this one. So it's Death and Ice Cream by Gareth P. Jones. It's a book set in a town called Lattes Mills, and it just, all of this like really weird stuff happens there. It's essentially a book of short stories which are just weird and bizarre, just mental. They do all come together in the end. Not that I knew what I'd read by the end of it. Even though it had come together, I was still confused. It's been over a month since I read this, and I still don't have a bloody clue what I read. I feel very much like the author might have accidentally chomped down on some dodgy mushrooms and took me on a trip with them. I mean, it's thought-provoking, funny and moving. Thought-provoking because I was like, what the did I just read? It was bizarre. There's stories in it like there's a young girl, and the house opposite her has been empty for as long as she's been alive. She's never seen anybody living in there. One day she looks out the window and she sees this dude climbing up on a ladder, and then he just jumps down the chimney like proper Santa Claus is it down the chimney, right? So she goes after him. She goes into the house. She looks down because she's in the attic. She looks down and the entire house is filled with water, like right up to the top, filled with water. And in it are a load of sharks just swimming around, just, you know, just living in this house. Joyo swimming around in the living room with, like, you know, wallpaper on the walls and everything, like, just Joyo. There's another story about a young lad who lives and works in a steam fair, in a travelling steam fair, only it's not powered by steam, it's powered by electric eels, and the electric eels have to eat electrical equipment to have the electric charge to power this steam fair. I don't know, it was just weird. There was so much weirdness going on. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think I was entertained by it, but it was wild. It was a wild ride. The ending was a bit underwhelming. Like I said, it all came together and it was then a bit like, ah. But overall, I did have a pretty good time with it. I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I read was like a bonus book, basically. It was one that I found. We went on a day trip to Bath and I found it in Bath. They had the most wonderful top-in store, and it was one of those shops that has got like the sliding ladders along the bookshelves and everything, and it was wonderful and magical, and I could have lived there. It was fabulous. Yeah, and they had loads of amazing books there. And this one caught my eye. It is The Unrecovered by Richard. I don't know how to say his surname, okay? I'm Welsh, so I instantly want to say Strachan. Strachan. I'm not sure. But this caught my eye. It caught my eye because one of the things that I love to do is I love visiting theme parks. This reminded me so much of Alton Towers, so it caught my eye. And then I picked it up and I saw the sprayed edges and I was like, oh, I need to get this book. It's a debut novel from Richard Strachan and it's set in Scotland during World War One. You follow a couple of characters. You've got Esther, who she's working in a hospital looking after wounded soldiers. And then you've got Jacob, who lives down the road. He's inherited this big creepy old mansion. There's like a legend attached to the house basically. And if the person who owns the house hears the howling of a dog, then it means that he's about to die. The house has got like a load of horrors attached to it, where the owner of the house did some absolutely horrific, horrendous, disgusting things to people. So the house is like cursed, haunted, and what have you. And so there's elements of supernatural in it. There's just elements of like war trauma and all sorts of stuff. Overall, I did really enjoy the book. It's very promising for a debut novel. There were quite a few chapters that were like flashback chapters, and I felt they went on way too long. It took forever to get to the point of those chapters, and I felt very much like they weren't really needed. Some of the things that happened in here were like I really felt them. So yeah, so the writing definitely has promise. There was one soldier. It just broke my heart, absolutely broke my heart. He was a soldier who had lost both of his hands in the war. He'd had to have both his hands amputated. And there was like a part in the story where the soldiers were doing an art class, and this soldier had been there with no arms, and he'd been trying to make a sculpture out of clay, like an angel out of clay. It was described about how he tried to do it with his stumps and he couldn't, and then he was just sitting there. And it broke my heart, you know, the way that it was described. I'm shit at describing things, okay, so but the way it was described, it broke my heart. I hated it. There were other things in the book as well. There were lots of eerie moments. There were lots of moments of made me uncomfortable. There was one that turned me sick, like absolutely turned me sick. The description basically of somebody eating a medieval hand that had been found like in a cave somewhere. There was the wet, unmistakable sound of him slowly cramming it into his mouth, his jaws chewing, slick with spit. He reached for another piece, folded it, choked, began to chew. The moist champing click of his jaws, the wet smack of his lips. He was picking shreds of flesh from the dead hands and eating them. He crunched the bone, he gnawed the sinew. Absolutely turned on me. I mean, maybe you guys out of context wouldn't thought much of that, okay, but the whole in context in the story, it was just, you know, the thought of it, it's disgusting. I like this line: animals don't wage war, do they? No point blaming God or the devil. It's just us, and we're very good at it by now. And that's an incredibly sad but true point, isn't it? Overall, I did have a really good time with this book. Like I said, the writing shows a lot of promise. I just felt like the flashbacks were unnecessary, or at least could have been massively cut back, and he'd have still been able to get his message across, you know. But it's one that I enjoyed. I will definitely be picking up more from this author if I see it. I gave it 3.5. Next book choice was one that had the word you or me in the title. So Craig chose Shatter Me. It's like a dystopian book. It's about a girl called Juliet. She's imprisoned because she has some sort of power. It is set in a world where humans have destroyed everything. Everything is pretty much dead, and there is a really corrupt government in place. This is a book that at the start I was like, yes, I really am enjoying this book. And then about 30 pages in, it was like, oh, his eyes, the colour of his eyes, the muscle definition through his shirt. That lost me, because I didn't care. I didn't give a shit about what colour his eyes were. Literally, right, I don't care about anything like that. I wanted to know about this shitty world that she was living in. I wanted to know about the corrupt government. I wanted to know how she got her power. But it became a story basically about her and this guy Adam. That was a big letdown for me, because I thought that this could have been such an epic book. It could have been so much more. Even if it was a friendship or something between Juliet and Adam, it still would have worked. You've got this really interesting world, this really interesting concept going on, and then it was just thrown to the side for her to continuously go on about the colour of his eyes. That's what I don't like about books that have romance in it. It's like the romance gets introduced and then all of a sudden that's what the entire book is about. And I don't care about that. I want to know about everything else that's going on. There's like a hint of a love triangle in it as well, which I just did not appreciate. I don't understand in these books why is this, it's always like such an irresistible girl and everybody bloody loves her and wants a piece of her, you know. I hate that. Yeah, so it was a book where at the start I thought it was brilliant, in the middle I thought it was utter shite, by the end I loved it again. So I'm very torn about it. I will continue the series because it's left me in a place where I want to know more. I want to know what happens next. I just don't care about the colour of his eyes. Show me the world. Show me why, you know, the whole world has gone to shit because humans have completely destroyed it. They've completely destroyed it. And all they wanted to concentrate on was his eyes. There's this bit in it. It says, "There is still a chance to change things. We can provide fresh drinking water to all people. We can make sure crops are not regulated for profit. We can ensure that they are not genetically altered to benefit manufacturers. Our people are dying because we are feeding them poison. Animals are dying because we are forcing them to eat waste, forcing them to live in their own filth, caging them together and abusing them. Plants are withering away because we are dumping chemicals into the earth that make them hazardous to our health. But these are things we can fix. We are fed lies because believing them makes us weak, vulnerable, malleable. We depend on others for our food, health, sustenance. This cripples us, creates cowards of our people, slaves of our children. It's time for us to fight back." I mean, I'm sorry, but if that does not prove that we are already living in a dystopian bloody world, what does? Because that is bang on. In fact, right, I really did like the writing in this. It was really good. It was really easy to read, and overall, it's a good book. I just wish it didn't have the romance in it, because that would have made it so much better for me. I know I'm probably on my own with that thought, because many people are here for romance. I'm generally not. I do believe that at some point I'm going to find a romance that I do like, but yeah, this wasn't it. I did give it 3.5 stars though. Like I said, I did enjoy it, and I will be continuing with the series. The prompt for the next book was a book with dual timeline. So Craig chose for me No Heart for a Thief by James Lloyd Dulin. This is one I'd never ever heard of before. It's one of Craig's books. It's about this guy called Cahill, and he lives in a land called Enya. It's been invaded by absolute bastards, these white people who are the Ghost Empire. They've invaded his land and basically they're taking over. They are ruling the land. They're forcing the natives of this land to speak the Ghost language. They are forcing them to believe in their gods, in their one true god, instead of the gods that the natives believe in. They are like publicly punishing these people in the most horrific ways if they are found to be speaking their own language, or if they're found to be worshipping their own gods or using the magic system that they have. They just treat them horribly because they have different colour skin and because they have different beliefs. And obviously, being white bastards, they think that their way is the only way. It's an incredibly uncomfortable read in that aspect, but I felt like it was really approached with care. It was really done quite well. So yeah, this is a book that I genuinely thought I was going to hate, but I absolutely loved it. The storyline, like I said, it follows Cahill, he's the thief of Enya. He rescues this girl called Tahereh. She's being chased by the Ghost soldiers. Ghost. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But she's been chased by these soldiers, right? These soldiers have just murdered her entire family. And she's done a runner, and they're chasing after him, and Cahill rescues her. And the book follows that, basically, where he takes this girl in and becomes her mentor and teaches her how to use her magic and how to look out for herself and hunt and all of this type of thing. You spend about 90% of the book following Cahill's story in the past, from his childhood, and it's from that timeline that you learn the most about what has happened to all of these people. You learn about their magic system, which is like spiritual and elemental at the same time. It was really interesting. It was a really good magic system. And you learn about the world. You learn about all of the different people in the world, and obviously you learn how he became the thief. While obviously all of that was really important, I did wish that we spent more time in the story with Cahill and Tahereh together, because the parts that we were in the story with them was beautiful, and seeing their relationship blossoming and stuff, I loved it. There is a war going on, but it's kept to the background. You're never really involved in the war. There's a couple of fights like with soldiers and stuff like that, but it's very, the actual war side of it is very much kept in the background, which is how I managed to enjoy this book. I didn't feel like there was a dull moment. It was just really well written. All of the really tough topics were written with care. I absolutely adored it. It is right up there now with one of my favourite books. The whole story is so good. It's so wonderful. It's full of magic. There's a lot of humour in it as well. It's a very personal story. I liked the line, I think Cahill was talking about his mother, and he said something along the lines of, she had a mouth that was fouler than a pig fat. I thought that was really funny. Definitely, it's one that I really recommend reading. Like I said, I am not a fantasy reader. I'm not a fantasy fan in general, but I absolutely loved this. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. The last book that I read, I think it might be my favourite book of the month. I can't decide if it's this book or if it's the No Heart for a Thief. That's my favourite book of the month. I just cannot decide. This book is The Great One by Alan Moore. I started off listening to this on audiobook. I went about 80% through on audiobook, and then I was like, just stop, I need to go and get the physical copy. So I went and got the physical copy, and then I reread it. Now I have to say, at the start of this book, I thought I was going to DNF it. When I first started listening to it, that prologue is a bitch. I mean, just scrap it. There was no need for it. And I think the prologue will put a lot of people off reading this book. But once you get through the prologue, it is cracking. The book follows a young lad called Dennis. I think he's like 18 or something, called Dennis. He lives in London, and it is set just after the World War II. And he works in a bookshop for this mental lady called Coffin Ada. She's somebody like that nobody messes with. She's foul-mouthed and nobody messes with her at all. She sends him on a mission to go and pick up some books for the bookshop. And when he comes back, in amongst the books is another book which she hadn't asked for, and is a book that technically should not exist. It's a completely like made up book that has never actually been written, but it's there. And it turns out that this book has come from what is known as the Great One, which is the other London. So he is tasked with, he has to travel to this other London. He has to take the book back. It's a wild read, okay? It is a wild read. It is full of magic. It is full of crazy characters. It is just, it's wild. But I bloody loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think I had a better time when I was listening to it on audiobook. When I started reading it, I did find it a lot harder to read than I did to listen to it. The narrator on the audiobook does such a great job. And it also has sound effects as well. So whenever he goes into the Great One, you get like this sort of eeriness. Like there's a background noise and everything. You get like sound effects, which really enhanced the experience for me. I just loved it. Yeah, like I said, I had a more difficult time reading. For example, right, you got the character Coffin Ada. She coughs a lot. Okay, that's not why she's called Coffin Ada, but she coughs a lot. And trying to read that is hard going. I'll give you an example, right, of her personality. It says, 5 cough 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 fucking Bob, I'll give you fucking haggle, cough cough cough, I'll fucking haggle you in a cough minute. Here, you want 5 fucking Bob's worth, do you? You cough cough cough, jumped up splash of spunk. Well, how's this for a cough cough bargain? That's my kind of personality right there, you know. I love characters like that. I think they are brilliant. But the cough cough cough, great when I was listening to it on audio. Reading it, not so great. That was difficult to get through in terms of reading. Also, the type of writing in this is the extremely overly descriptive, very flowery, full of, like, you need a dictionary with you to read it, you know. It's that type of book, which I guess puts a lot of people off. I thought it would put me off, but surprisingly, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved all the characters in it were bonkers, and I just thought it was brilliant. It was highly entertaining, a concept that I'd never read or listened to before. The other London was bonkers. It was wild. We're talking like caterpillars made out of Durex and spiders that were crates and crocodile pavements and just all manners of things that are from your wildest imagination that just shouldn't exist, you know. It was brilliant. But yes, some of the writing in it was just right up my street, you know. He noticed genitalia crawling everywhere about the chilly premises like bearded mollusks. I mean, the imagery that put into my head. Bearded mollusks. Oh, it creased me. It was one of those moments where I laughed out loud. Both Grace and Dennis dunked their plain digestives in their teacups, each intent on not permitting too long an immersion, anxious to avoid an oversaturated morsel falling with a fecal plop into their laps. Yeah, I just loved it. I loved the language used. I loved the imagination, and it is just so wild, but everything is written in a way where you can literally just see it. It's so visual because it's overly descriptive. It's so visual. This is a book, I adored it. I absolutely adored it. But if you want to read it, get it on audio and just plow through that prologue, because it's a get through. Once you get through that, you're on one, and it was brilliant. In terms of book of the month, it is between these two. It's really tight. I don't know, this one's beautifully written, this one is just bonkers. I love them both. I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, not perfect. If it didn't have that prologue in it, it would have been a 5-star for me, but that prologue just ruined it for me. I did have one DNF last month. That was The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. Absolutely nothing wrong with this book. I just was not in the mood for it. The book follows a guy who owns a bookshop, and I think I got a few chapters in, and it just all seemed to be about the fact that he was so pining over the fact this girl left him like 20 years ago, and he just hasn't got over it, and the whole book just seemed to be about that, and I was like, not my scene. It's not something that I am gonna get rid of, I don't think. I just feel like I need to read it at a different time in my life, I think. So it's going back on my bookshelf. It's a DNF for now. There were also 2 books from my TBR that I didn't get to, and I'm not sorry about it, because I wasn't really looking forward to them. That was The Book Thief and The Bone Clocks. I just didn't have any interest in picking them up last month. I mean, they'll go back on the shelves. I'll probably read them at some point in my life, but not now. So this is everything that I read in February. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? And tell me what your favourite book was in February. I'd love to know. I always love to talk about books. Thank you ever so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you give me a big thumbs up and you hit subscribe. I need all the help that I can get at the moment. It's free, it won't cost you a penny, but it'll help me out so much. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.